What's happening, people? Dom here from Lens Pro To Go and Lens Rentals. Welcome back to the channel. We are going to be taking a look at two 85mm f1.2 lenses. One from Nikon, the Nikkor 85mm f1.2S, and the other from Canon. Classic Canon Nikon versus video going on today. This is the 85mm f1.2L USM DS, stands for defocus smoothing. We're going to chat a little bit about what that means and what that looks like. But long story short, today I thought I would sort of like plot out category by category so we can really get a better understanding of which lens is coming out on top here. Maybe not which one's coming out on top, but at the very least figuring out just like how these two lenses differ. And actually I could pretty much tell you right here, the only difference is this one focuses counterclockwise, this one focuses clockwise. So that's it, end of video. See you next week, subscribe to the channel. No, of course not. I mean, yes, that's an actual thing, but there's plenty more to talk about in this video. Maybe now is a good time to remind you that you should just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, why not toss a subscribe to our friends over at the Lens Rentals channel. But anyways, first we're gonna start by taking a look at the build of these lenses. I think just like optically, it's impossible to develop an 85-1.2 that's not an absolute unit like these two. Obviously the Nikon is a bit longer with the narrow like flange part at the ends, but just ignoring that real quick, then you can actually see that these two lenses are basically the exact same size. But considering that, interestingly enough, both of these lenses weigh exactly the same at just over 2.5 pounds each, which yes, each of these are like lead weights in my hands, which is definitely something to consider. At that weight, a setup with this lens on it could be pretty strenuous after a couple minutes of hand holding. And just for me, I found that the shorter barrel of this Canon lens was a little bit more annoying and awkward to operate while I was looking through the viewfinder. I just feel like my hands didn't really know where to go to find the focus ring. The Nikon lens has a larger area for that focus ring, but also just the added length of this lens is making it more likely for my hands to just kind of land on that focus ring. Also, we'll talk about this in a second, but the response on this focus ring is so much better than the Canon, which is really, really loose and like free flowing, but we're going to talk more about that coming up. Both of these lenses have an 82mm front thread, and just taking a quick look down the lens barrel and trying to pay attention to the coatings in both of these lenses, because turns out both of these manufacturers have put a lot of effort into specific coatings for these lenses that are supposed to achieve a certain effect in like the light gathering. This Nikon, for example, is boasting like a nano crystal coating going on. That's supposed to counter the ghosting that happens when the elements of the lens start reflecting off of each other. And this is also going to help tame unwanted lens flares from light entering the lens diagonally. While on the Canon lens, the whole appeal of this specific defocus smoothing is there are specially designed coatings going on in here. Coatings that are designed to like soften the appearance of something that is like bokehfied. And I actually just thought it was really interesting that coatings were the solution to this. And you can see it's really apparent in this side by side that I did between the DS version and the non-DS RF 85-1.2. One notable thing, this Nikkor lens is stabilized internally where this 85mm from Canon is not. That's certainly something to think about considering that these lenses are basically the exact same size and weight. Now let's talk about the focusing scenario on each of these lenses real quick. And just disclaimer, I'm not going to be talking about autofocus performance too much in these lenses. It's just too hard of a thing to test for as long as I'm testing both of these lenses on two different camera systems. But I did roll some shots with tracking autofocus on to see how well they track this billiards ball rolling across the table. Here I was only looking for any like weird jittering or any like glaring errors that I could have very easily pinned to the lens. The type of focusing that I wanted to put an emphasis on in this video was manually focusing, something that can be a really hit or miss experience with lenses that are focused by wire, as basically every lens designed for a mirrorless system is. It's all programming now, which means the programming has to respond really well. And I've got to say, I really don't like the focus by wire wire experience on a lot of these Canon RF lenses, not just this 85. I always find it so hard to find an exact point of focus on this 85 1.2. When you move it slow, it moves way too slow and doesn't move anywhere. And then the second you move it with a little bit of speed, it could rack like the entire focus range. It's so finicky, which I'm sure some people like. You could make a really large focus move just by moving the thing really fast. But overall, I was just really frustrated by this experience, and it does not help that this focus ring has like zero resistance to it at all. It felt laggy. It felt like there's like latency going on in here. Just was not impressed. The manually focusing experience on this Nikkor 85 is 1,000 times better. This resistance that's on this focus ring, even though it's still focused by wire, is a physical thing going on the lens that greatly aids the manually focusing experience. The changes that I make using this focus ring actually make sense, way more well executed in this Nikon system. Now, just looking at a few portraits I did side by side, I just have a few notes about like the character of these two lenses. So that striking difference that you're going to notice is you're really seeing that defocus smoothing on the Canon in action there, where the Nikon renders those bokehs as like much more shapely, where on the Canon it's just a nice ambiguous like blurry highlight. And I think most would agree the Nikon bokeh in this case is much more noticeable in the frame, which is probably working against it in this image. Though with that being said though, on the other hand, I think this Nikon lens represents skin tones and skin textures in a much more pleasing way, where the Canon tends to reveal inconsistencies in those textures, and it's just going to be more naturally contrasty to my eye, which like on paper is a good thing, but it's weird, like sometimes during portraiture those things can work against you. So it's kind of interesting. And one more thing I'm looking at these side-by-side portraits too is the focus fall off on this Nikon lens appears to be much more drastic, way more aligned with the focus fall off that I think is happening on an f1.2 lens. We're just like looking at the area of where my hair on the front of my head is in focus, just sort of going back there, seeing how quickly it falls off into out of focus hair on the back. Where we look at the Canon image, I'm noticing that like my ear and some of that hair that's like more on the top of my head, like towards the back, didn't fall off to be quite as out of focus as it was on the Nikon. And these are taken with the cameras in the exact same place, sensor planes aligned, subject aligned in the frame. So I gotta give that to the Nikon too, much more aligned with what I had in mind when taking pictures at f1.2. So honestly, with all things considered, maybe for a video application like something cinematic where I'm going to be manually focusing between subjects, doing a lot of rack focuses and stuff, just given that experience on the Canon, I know I'm going to the Nikon for that. Though, on the other hand, say I'm doing a portrait session and it's really important to me that I want like soft, consistent out of focus area where nothing in the background is poking out at me and possibly taking attention off what's supposed to be the subject in the frame. Then maybe I'm going with the Canon 85 with the focus desmoothing. I think you could already guess by now, if I had to pick a favorite out of these two, it's absolutely going to be this Nikon lens. That is pretty much all I've got for you today, folks. A couple sweet videos planned out for you guys over the next couple of weeks, so don't go anywhere. And if you are subscribed, make sure to hit that little bell button that's next to the subscribe button. That is going to keep you notified when those videos come out. So as always, y'all, happy shooting, and we'll see you in the next one.
This is Stumpy. He's really proud of his stump. He came over to show it to me. He brought it from all the way over there. Isn't that right, Stumpy? Bye, friends.